Matthew chapter 2, verse 13 through 23. So after the wise men were gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, flee to Egypt with the child and his mother, the angel said. Stay there until I tell you to return, because Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. That night, Joseph left for Egypt with the child and Mary, his mother. And they stayed there until Herod's death. This fulfilled what the Lord has spoken through the prophet, I called my son out of Egypt. Herod was furious when he realized that the wise men had outwitted him. He sent soldiers to kill all the boys in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old and under, based on the wise men's report of the star's first appearance. Herod's brutal action fulfilled what God had spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. A cry was heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning. Rachel weeps for children, refusing to be comforted, for they are dead. When Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt. Get up, the angel said. Take the child and his mother back to the land of Israel, because those who are trying to kill the child are dead. So Joseph got up and returned to the land of Israel with Jesus and his mother. But when he learned that the new ruler of Judea was Herod's son, Archelaus, he was afraid to go there. Then after being warned in a dream, he left for the region of Galilee. So the family went and lived in a town called Nazareth. And this fulfilled what the prophets had said. He will be called a Nazarene. This is the word of our Lord. Thanks be to God. We celebrate Christmas, and it is a great day because Christ was born and he began the new creation. It's a great day. And it's such a great day, we often forget about the day after Christmas. But I want to think about the day after Christmas, when Joseph had to bring baby Jesus, the Son of God, home from the hospital. Now, what happens after the birth? The birth is exciting because it's an event. There's a clear beginning and it's a clear ending. I know it's a long event, 24 hours of labor and pain, but it is still a beginning and an end. And at the end, miraculous. Before, it was just two of you. Now, it's 3 human beings in that room. It's a joyous event, and everybody celebrates it. But what happens after? It's after the birth when you begin to realize that actually this baby belongs to you. You are responsible for this baby for the rest of your life. And that's kind of heavy. I remember when Ian was born, and that first day when Ian was born, I loved it. It was great. Why? Because we were in the hospital. And the nurse would cart the baby in and say, would you like to feed him? And I would say, no, not now. And then, okay, then they would cart back him, and they would feed him and bathe him and change his diapers. And they would bring him in again. And sometimes I would say yes. It was really good. But the second day, they kicked us out. They said, you have to go home. And I said to the nurse, can you come with us? It was as I was taking the baby downstairs, and as I strapped that 6-pound human being, so small, into the car seat, that I realized it's just beginning. The nurse made sure it was all tight. He said, congratulations. It sounded sarcastic to me. What am I going to do with another human being who can't do anything for himself? I can't return it. I can't exchange it. I can't put it on hold. I've got him for the rest of my life. I have to bring him home, and he's going to follow me everywhere. It's hard. It's heavy. Right? But what about Joseph? He had the Son of God. Like, as he looked at the baby, did he say, you are the Messiah who's going to save the world? Man, I better keep you alive. How heavy must that responsibility been on his shoulders? What do you do after you bring the Son of God home from the hospital? And when you look at Joseph, as heavy as the responsibility was, I think he did a pretty good job. Did he? I mean, didn't Jesus turn out all right? He did a pretty good job. And please don't think that it was easy. Like, he's the Son of God. So I mean, like, he just floated from infant, childhood to adulthood, skipping all the terrible twos. No, no, no. You know, Jesus was a full human being. And that means as an infant, he was a handful. As an infant, he ate, he belched, he chucked up, he peed, he pooped, he napped, and he did all of that in the exact same order 10 times a day. And I'm sure Joseph got tired. Even if he was the Son of God, he must have been tired. I'm sure he got frustrated when Jesus woke up again for the 10th night in a row. And when he was looking at this Jesus, did he say, "Oh, Son of God"? Or did he say, "Son of other things"? He must have been frustrated. And then when he hit the terrible two, and when he spanked Jesus, did he say, "Sorry about the Son of God, but I got to do this"? It wasn't easy for him. I'm sure he was overwhelming. And yet, I think he did a pretty good job. You guys ever feel overwhelmed? Not just for you parents with children, but even without children. Do you feel like God's given you a gift and a calling, but you have never fully accepted it because it sounds so overwhelming? Then I think you could understand a little bit of Joseph. And I think you and I could learn a little bit from Joseph. Because again, Joseph did pretty well. Right? Now, there's not much about Joseph in the Bible, but these things we can assume confidently. One is that he was the first teacher of Torah to Jesus. Because that's how the Jewish home was. The father taught the son. And so the first words of God that he heard, this Jesus, baby Jesus, was from Joseph. Now, of course, he was a prodigy. By 12 years old, he knew more things about Torah than Joseph. There's a story in Luke when he was 12. They go to Jerusalem, Passover, great holy festival. And there he is, he's sitting, and he's dialoguing with the teachers of law. Actually, he's even smarter than the teachers of law who spent their entire lifetime. So yes, Jesus outpaces Joseph quickly. But in the beginning, as Jesus was learning these words, it was Joseph who taught him. And another thing, it's curious, right? When Jesus begins ministry, Joseph's not there. And most obvious interpretation of this is that at this time, Joseph has passed away. And the reason why? Most likely, probably natural death. Remember, at those times, the average lifespan was in the 40s. So actually, Jesus starting his ministry in the 30s was actually middle age. But why did he start ministry in 30s? Again, in those days, usually the son did what the father did. And in the Bible, we know that Jesus was called a carpenter. So he spent a lot of time with Joseph. That's just how it was. It was only in the industrial time that the father leaves home for work. And so there's a separation between the father and the child. But I see Joseph spending a lot of time. And as he's building those things with the wood, he's building morals and character to Jesus. Because morals are not so much taught, but they're caught. Seeing what Joseph does while they're doing something together. And I think it's because this respect for Joseph that Jesus starts ministry in the 30s. That's one of for me, that makes sense. Right? He did carpentry, he respected his dad, but once his dad passed away, he begins to do ministry for his heavenly Father. So Joseph had a powerful influence in his life. So Joseph did a pretty good job. So we asked Joseph, how did you do it? And I think Joseph would at least say these 3 things. And these 3 tips are good for us as parents, because every child is in one sense a child of God, but also all of you guys, I guess for some of you guys this might be early parenting lessons. But even for people who are not married, teenagers, high schoolers, the gift that God has given you, the calling that God has given you, it might sound overwhelming, but how do we accept it and nurture it and mature it? So Joseph, what do? After you bring the Son of God home from the hospital? He said these 3 things, I think. He said, first, watch out for megalomaniac tyrants who want to kill your son. Be careful. Joseph is a realist, and he realizes that there is Herod who's out to get the baby Jesus. He's a realist to really know that just because he is a son of God doesn't mean he has this invincibility cloak all over his family. That things are all going to just pan out. No. Just because we're Christians doesn't mean all the traffic lights will turn green as you go. No matter how hard you pray because you're late for your first job. No. Joseph is a realist. Did you see that in Matthew 2:14? He says that night, once he realizes that his son is under threat, that night he takes action. He's a realist. So much of a realist that he even gets afraid. Matthew chapter 2, verse 22. Matthew chapter 2, verse 22. It says here, but when he learned that the new ruler of Judea was Herod's son of Archelaus, he was afraid to go there. So much of a realist that he was afraid. That things could happen. Bad things could happen. He was definitely not a floating father, an absentee father. He was totally focused in keeping his son alive. And so he had the courage to be realistic and to see what the threats there are and then to take action against them. Now you guys might think, where's trust in all this? Fear? Either trust drives our fear. No, trust actually has the courage to face the fears and call it by its name. If actually the lack of trust, doubt, is the one that makes us deny that there's any fear. Oh, everything's going to be all right. But you know what that is? It's because you're afraid. You're not going to face that fear. But courage, faith gives you courage to face the fear and name it. And then gives you the courage to take action. Actually for Joseph to say, this is a threat against my son, and I must take action, is an evidence of his faith in God. It takes faith and courage to face your fears. And there are a lot of threats, my friends. There are a lot of threats even today, especially today, I think, for our children. The most recent statistics show that actually kids, even at the age of 8, get exposed to hardcore porn, which totally destroys their understanding of sexuality and sexual identity. At age 8. These are the threats that our kids face. By the age of 16, 90% of the kids have already seen porn. Now again, it's not about discovering sexuality, it's discovering abuse, degradation, inhumanity. Another study showed that actually high schoolers, 17% of the students use cigarette or drugs or alcohol during the school day. These are the schools to which our kids are going. It's so prevalent that 90% of the kids, and I bet 90% of the teenagers right here, know a friend, somebody who's doing drugs in school. These are the threats that we are facing. Every 42nd in America alone, a child gets kidnapped or abducted. These are the threats that we face. And it's not faith to say, oh, it doesn't happen in my family. It doesn't happen in our church. No. That's fear itself, isn't it? Denying it. We must have the faith to face our fears. That also means this too. There's threats to us adults too. It is a reality that people do waste their lives. Like there are a lot of stories, and they're powerful stories. Like today, Andy shared, and that's a great story. People who are lost and in the wrong place, and then they get saved by God. They go to God and they repent, and that's great, and that gives hope. And I want to see more of that story. But there are also a lot of stories where people never take that chance, where people till the end deny God, where a sudden car crash and a sudden death means he never got to say, I'm sorry. There are a lot of people who die with plenty of regret. There are threats to our lives. They are threats to our calling and our gifts. Indeed, this world wants you to die without ever having lived. And we've got to be real about that. Just going to church doesn't give us any invincibility against those threats. Tony Campbell told us about a story when he was flying down to Dallas, and the young woman next to him was crying profusely, and him being a pastor turned to her and said, "Look, I'm a pastor, and it sounds like you're going something tough, so do you want to share that with me, and I could pray for you?" And she said, "I'm going down to Dallas for my father's funeral, and I hadn't seen him for 10 years. The last words I said to him as I was leaving was, 'Go to hell.'" This is the reality. And you know what? I think some dose of fear is good to have. We might not get a second chance of really embracing God's calling, of really holding our kid and telling him, "I love you." That's the reality that we're in. And that was the first thing that Joseph would say. There are tyrants who are out to kill your son. There are tyrants who are out to kill your gifts and your calling. And so time to act is now. Again, Matthew 2:14. Immediately, once he realizes that, he goes up and he takes his family to safety. Immediately. So sometimes you got to act now. And that too is an act of faith. See, it takes faith to say, this is my fear, but I'm going to face it. I'm not going to deny it. I'm going to face it. I'm going to take action now because God will be on my side. God, that's faith. So some of you guys need a dose of fear. And some of you guys have to act now, today. In fact, even the prayer meeting that we have on Tuesday, some of you guys have to come to the Tuesday New Year's Eve prayer meeting. And you guys have to let go of those sins and addictions to whatever it is, to any substance, to porn, to internet, to games. Those are ruining your life. Friends, your life is getting shorter. It is. Time is always running out. Now, while you have breath, you have hope. While you have breath, you always have hope. At any point, no matter how deep you have gone, you can always come out. You have hope. So act now. Act now. Especially now as 2013 is coming to close, act now. I'm going to live the life God has given me, and I'm going to pursue the call of God now. Because people do die with regrets. Okay, that's the reality. But the second thing he will say is this. Okay, so there are tyrants out to kill your baby son. Okay. But secondly, but get good sleep. You got to get a lot of good sleep. Did you notice how actually all the important decisions Joseph makes comes after a dream? It's always a dream. And what does that mean? It means at least that he's getting good sleep. Because I know anytime I can remember my dream, it's because I've had long rhythms, weeks of having good sleep. If I'm not sleeping well, my brain is not functioning. It doesn't recall any dreams. But when I'm sleeping like regularly, regular sleep time, regular wake time, then, oh, I had that dream. That was nice. And that's the first thing he will say. Second thing he will say to you, have a lot of sleep. Now, you guys might say, well, Joseph was different. He had this revelatory dreams. Angels came to him, and the angels spelled it out. Go to Egypt. Stay there. Until I say, come back. Did you get it? Right? And we might think like, that's special. I don't get those dreams. But when you think about it, all the decisions that he made after a good sleep and a dream about going to Egypt, coming back to Israel, going to Galilee, all of that, even marrying Mary, all of that. When you think about it, those angels' words were only confirming what he was already considering. He wasn't dumb. He was like, I'm sure again, when he went up to Israel, he realized that Herod's son is still the king, and he just tells him, right, he was afraid. Maybe it's not good to stay here. Maybe I should go somewhere quiet like Galilee. And the angel goes, that's a good idea. Even Herod, I'm sure when the Magi came, and then the Magi blessed them with the gifts, I'm sure Joseph was scratching his head and said, how did you know about this? How did you find that? We went to King Herod. King Herod, did you tell him? Yeah, that's not good. It's not good. And again, at that point he's thinking, maybe I should get out of here. And the angel says, get out of here. Even Mary too, right? Of course, over there, even Mary, we'll look at that a little later, but already his heart was still with Mary. And the angel, in one sense, just confirms that. So the lesson here is this: not get revelatory dreams with a lot of angels flying around, but to get good sleep. Because often you'll make good decisions after a good sleep. And isn't that true? After good sleep, you make good decisions. It's like one of the things I practice is that if I'm angry, I write my email, but never send it that day. I'm going to sleep on it. In fact, I want to be so safe that I don't even write that email on Gmail because I might hit send by mistake. I put it on a Google Doc that's private. And then the next morning after a good sleep, I look at it and say, thank God I did not send that one. Because after a good sleep, your mind works better. You know all this. And in fact, actually, I think a while ago, I did a whole sermon on sleep. But it's so important because we forget to practice good sleep that I think it's good for us to just hear that again as far as our second point. Get good sleep. You know the benefits of good sleep. Studies have constantly shown, right? You have better memory retention because your mind is processing it. You're more creative because what you think and what you feel is also being consolidated, right? Actually, it increases your fitness. There was a study in Stanford where they studied college football athletes, and those people who sleep well and those people who don't. And then later down the road, after training, those people who slept well was able to improve their sprint speed over those people who couldn't sleep well. I mean, it's many things that benefits you. You guys know children under 8, if they don't get enough sleep, then they are hyperactive, cranky, inattentive, i.e., it drives the parents insane. The kids have to have good sleep. And look, even parents have to have good sleep. In fact, I would say good parents are made by parents who sleep well. Sleep well. And when you think about it, and I said this before too, sleeping is also an act of trust, isn't it? Because what does sleep say? I've done my part. I can do nothing else. I am a human being. I need my rest. And I can't control this anymore. So God, you do the rest. Clunk. It's trust. Isn't it? It's trust. Ian, my first baby, when he came home, I was so afraid of SID, sudden infant death syndrome. So every 10 seconds, I would put my finger under his nose, like, he's breathing, he's breathing, he's breathing. When Elena came, I did not care. I mean, I made sure it was nice, safe, and after that, I'm sleeping. Even if she's crying, I'm sleeping. Sleep is important. In fact, you know, have you ever heard of the phrase, cleanliness is next to godliness? Well, I think good sleep is next to godliness. I don't think you could be godly without good sleep. So parents, relax. Sleep well. It's okay to turn the DVD on a little bit. Okay? It's not going to make your kid grow up to be a failure, right? You need rest. We all need rest. And also, this not just parenting, but even also our life and calling too. Right? We can't be so anxious about it that we think that my whole life's destiny depends on every little minute-to-minute minute decisions I make. Where I go, who do I meet, what do I do, what do I say, what do I dress, as if all of that. No. You do your part and you sleep because that's how you express your trust. I mean, it must have been heavy for Joseph, but yet he's determined to get good sleep. Let's look at Matthew chapter 1, 18 through 24. This is how Jesus, the Messiah, was born. His mother Mary was engaged to be married to Joseph. But before the marriage took place, while she was still a virgin, she became pregnant through the power of the Holy Spirit. Joseph, her fiancé, was a good man and did not want to disgrace her publicly, so he decided to break the engagement quietly. As he considered this, that's interesting, isn't it? Like, if you found out that your fiancé, as far as the impression goes, cheated on you, would you consider take time to sleep? Let's see what would be the best. You'll be in fit, you'll be flying off the handle, you'll be angry. But he goes, okay, I'm going to sleep on this. And it's only when he sleeps on this, the angel comes and says, no, actually Mary was telling the truth. What if he was impulsive? What if he decided to take action right now because he is right? So Joseph would say to us, relax. Take a nap. Let's consider it tomorrow. Watch out for tyrants who's trying to kill your son. Make sure you take good sleep. The third thing is this. He would say, be kind. Be kind. Again, think about the weight. Like, if he thought that it was all up to him to teach Jesus everything there is to know about being a Messiah, that would be a heavy burden. Like, what do I do? What do I do? I have to make sure he's in the Messiah track, that he gets there. Okay, so then I have to make sure he goes to Torah lessons, and after that he goes to miracle worker lessons, and after that he talks about communication lessons. Make sure I drive him all around, make sure the schedule works. It would make him unhappy, make him go crazy. He realized that there's not much you can do with a kid. We might think we do, but we don't. There's only a few things that we can do, and those few things is what I'm going to do well. Actually, a study had shown that parents with kids are less happier. Kids bring less happiness into a family's life. That's the study. That's the honest data that shows, right? When parents are during the day and then they're asked to, report their mood, it's always unhappiness. You get less happy. So now the secret is out. Okay, you singles and you parents without kids, parents with kids, they come to you and say, oh, kids bring so much happiness. They're telling you a lie. Do you know why they're telling you a lie? Because misery loves company. They want you to join them in the misery. So this guy, Brian, he's an economist. He came out with a book, an economist, and it's entitled, Be Selfish and Have More Kids. Why being a great parent is more fun and less work than you think. Now, he entitled that, and he writes the book because it is true, he says in the data, that parents today are less happy. But that is because parents today think they can determine the kid's destiny. They're doing everything they do. Lessons, make sure he does a sign language before he can speak. Like, make sure he has foreign language. Make sure he has these different activities. Make sure he has soccer, lacrosse, bowling. Make sure he has tutor for everything. Math, English, tutor for recess. How to rest well. I mean, everything. And he says, nowadays, we have spent double amount of time, the parents with the kids, than just even 10 years ago. And of course, that's going to make you unhappy. And he goes on. He studies the data further, and the data shows that actually parents don't matter much to the kids. And what he did was, this another guy, Bruce Sekerdot, he studied Korean orphans in the 50s and 60s. At that time, these orphans were given to actually even families with low income. If you were just above the 25% poverty line, you were able to adopt. Today, that would not happen. And so what he did was this. He studied those orphans who were adopted to very rich family and very poor family. And he thought, surely income is very environmental. I'm sure the people who got adopted kids who got to rich family, there's more money there, there's more teaching of money and value there, and then there's, of course, nepotism, right? For a phone call, a connection. I'm sure they would do far better. But the study showed that actually there was a very negligible difference of income in the early 20s. But later on the road, there was almost 0% difference between kids who were raised in a poor family and the richest family. Parents don't matter much. Even education, no matter how much tutoring, they say you average it out with all the education, all the money that's spent on the kids, maybe you get 3 more months of higher education for those kids who went through all the tutoring that the parents could afford. Would you pay all that money, pull your hair out for 3 months of higher education? And the economist says, oh, no, that's not a good investment. It turns out that parents don't matter much. But is there anything that parents influence? Again, Bruce Seiko, he says there are two main things. Again, data. It's just data. Two main things. One, high influence is if the parent drinks and smokes, then the child will. So destructive behavior, the kid usually tends to imitate. And second thing is this, surprise, maybe you shouldn't be surprised, how the parent treats other human beings. That the kids pick up right away. And they imitate. And these two are the place of greatest influence that parents have. And it seemed like Joseph kind of knew that intuitively. He will make sure the big threats are gone. Okay? Keep him safe. Give him a big space of safety. And let him be. Let him run around. Let him be himself. And with that, what I can do? Man, I'm just a carpenter. And I never had an experience of raising a Messiah. But I'll be myself. Be kind. And isn't that what Jesus shows? A gentle, kind righteousness. Right? Now, reading today in Matthew chapter 1, we see Joseph showing that kindness, doesn't he? I mean, he had all the right to be angry at Mary. And the righteous thing for him to do would be to bring her out and say, look, she got pregnant without me. I am righteous. She's not. And that was a typical Pharisaical, that day's righteousness. I am right because she did wrong. So bringing her out in public, yeah, maybe the person has vengeance in mind, but it also exonerates him. He could have planned that, and he would be totally righteous in everyone's eyes. But what does he do? He says, no, I'm going to do it quietly. Will people talk? Yes. Joseph impregnated her and he divorced her. It's like, I don't care what people say about my righteousness. I trust God's righteousness. Now, of course, it turns out that actually Mary was pure. But you see, in that act, don't you see his kindness? A gentle type of righteousness? And isn't that what you see in Jesus? It doesn't have the flouting, the comparing, the shaming type of righteousness that the Pharisees have, but a gentle righteousness. And so when he's hanging out with the prostitutes and everybody says sinners, he doesn't care. Because actually he's kind of seen it already. And when he's crucified and he's dying, he says, Father, forgive them. And in that forgiveness, don't you see already Joseph, his willingness to forgive Mary in that perceived wrong? Kindness is where we could have the most influence. Kindness might look small, but it's huge. Because kindness is not just an indicator of one's happiness, right? People who are kind tend to be happier, but it's also kingdom value. So when you're kind, not only are you raising up your children of God well, but you also, even if it's you pursuing your call, your life, your calls, your gift, when you're kind, you are already living that life and that call. Kindness is a powerful kingdom value. Gordon was a pastor in Manhattan, and every morning he would come out to Roosevelt Island, and at the foot of the Roosevelt Island there would be a diner, and there at 6:30 he would always have his donut and his coffee. And after a month and a half, he realized that it's always the same crowd, 6:30 a.m., the same crowd. And so he thought he would break the ice. So he stood up and he said, look, I've been here for a month and a half, and everywhere I see, it's the same face. I think we should get to know each other. I'm Gordon. I'm a pastor. And then people, these tough New Yorkers, surprise, surprise, began to introduce themselves, told them his name, and what they did. And there were some luminaries there, like Tom Wolfe, one of the bestsellers, novelist. So this introduction, and then from the next morning, things changed. The atmosphere, everybody was kinder, it was nicer. They asked how they were doing. But there was one person's name who they did not know, and it was the owner's name. Quiet, reticent owner. So one day, George says to him, look, I'm Gordon. Gordon says to him, look, what is your name? Everyone here knows each other's name. You haven't told us your name. What is your name? And the restaurant owner says, my name is not Harrison. My name is Hasim. I come from Baghdad. My family is still there. And in a few days, your country is going to bomb it. So this was like a few days before the Gulf War, in the first Gulf War in 1990. And when he said that, there were some Jews over there. They got quiet because they knew that Baghdad had rockets aimed at Tel Aviv. And then they left quietly. And about a few days later, Gordon gets a call. They're bombing Baghdad. As soon as he gets the call, he washes his face, he rushes to the diner because he wants to be the first one there to look at Hasim and to comfort him. But as he comes down the stairs and he turns the corner, he sees all those 6:30 a.m. customers out there with the same intention, waiting for Hasim. And when Hasim comes to the corner and sees this crowd, he freezes. And everybody comes around him and they comfort him, hold him, pat him on the shoulders. And Tom Wolfe says, okay, Gordon, you're the pastor, pray. And so he prays. This Christian pastor leads atheists and agnostics and prays for a Muslim for the safety of his family. After the prayer is done, Hasim looks at the friends that he has. And he looks at Gordon and says, okay, coffee is on me, but you still have to pay for the donuts. Kindness is powerful because it is kingdom value. And that is also trust, isn't it? Again, there's not much that we human beings can do. We can't even determine our children who are with us, who's come from our body. But there are few things that we can do. One of them is kindness. And this I will. I will treat another human being the way I will treat God. So those are the three lessons. This is the way we express our trust. Face your fears. Sleep well, and be kind. Let us pray. So the first thing I want you guys to consider, what are the weights that is pulling your life down? Some addiction. It is a threat. It will leave you with regret if you keep living in it. Throw it away now. Are you sleeping well? Trust God. Let God do some work while you rest. And third, are you kind? Not kind to just those who are kind to you, but to strangers, to even enemies, because that's going to be your legacy. Okay, let's consider those as the praise team leads us in worship.